Alrighty, I think we are live again, ladies. So we're just gonna wait a few minutes for our viewers to log in. And happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Can I take a picture of us?
Yeah.
I'll share it. Tag everyone.
Great. Thank you. You know what? I'll screenshot too.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like people are starting to tune in as well. So thank you, everyone that's tuning in. Make sure you allow StreamYard to post your comments so that we can answer to you personally. Of course, if you have questions, put those in the comment section as well. We've got a great set of panelists today. Lots of knowledge, lots of information sharing. All right, I see the ladies are joining in. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Feel free to tell us hello if you're out there watching. Who's out there watching with us? All righty. Looks like we've got a nice group of ladies out there waiting for us. So again, welcome, welcome everyone to Perspectives, Women in Leadership. We've got a great set of panelists today. I see we've got some users online with us today too, ladies. So I want to hit right into our panelists and have them introduce themselves. And as we do so, they're going to share a little bit more about themselves. They have accomplished tons out there. You would be so proud of these panelists. So I will start with my very first panelist, which is Valerie Ashford Brown. So Valerie is an executive and leadership coach. She's the founder and owner of Leading Edge Coaching and Consulting.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Tonya, and to my colleagues here in the leadership space. Certainly happy to be here tonight. And thank you, Tonya, for creating this space on International Women's Day. So happy, happy, happy International Women's Day to all of the brilliant women out here across the globe. It's an exciting day for us. I hope that we take this beyond celebrating for today. But I am Valerie Ashford Brown, a career coach and also executive and leadership development. And I assist women who are unfulfilled in their career and allow them and help them to align with their goals and things that line with their soul as well, so that they can be all that they are designed to be and go to their next level. So I'm excited about being here today. And yes, I'm excited about this conversation too, because I know it's going to be fire. I have some amazing panelists with me. So it's going to be grand. I'm just going to say that. Yes. It's going to be grand. So everyone out there, make sure you stay tuned. So thank you again, Tonya, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for spending time with us this evening, Valerie. So my next panelist is Dr. Natalie Underdown. She is also an executive coach, an organizational psychologist, and founder, owner of the New Company. Tell us a little bit more, Natalie.
Thanks, Tonya, for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. I am, as Tonya said, an executive coach, organizational psychologist, which means my background is in the psychology of people in the workplace. And I help purpose-driven leaders create greater impact, revenue, and work-life alignment. So I'm really passionate about women's empowerment, and I'm just really happy to be here tonight. So happy International Women's Day. And Tonya, thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Thank you, Natalie. I'm excited as well. And our final panelist is attorney Juhu Thukral. She has a laser focus in human rights. So she's the founder and principal of Apsara Projects. Tell us more.
Yes, thank you, Tonya, for including me today and for just pulling all of us together, all of us here on this panel and everybody who is joining in the conversation today. I'm Juhu Thukral, and I am a human rights lawyer and a social impact founder, and I've started a number of organizations working on issues around racial justice and gender equity. I've done a lot of work over the years on issues around sexual violence, and really just a through line in my work from that lens is really women's leadership. And so I advise, not-for-profits, advocacy organizations, and philanthropic institutions and corporate companies on how to do social impact work. So excited to talk about women's leadership with all of y'all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. So lots of information sharing, a wealth of information out here, ladies. So those that are tuning in, if you have any questions for our panelists, you know their backgrounds now, feel free to ask some questions in the chat as well, and we'll get those posted on the screen. So I will dive right in. So ladies, we don't have any form of fashion or order. We're going to have some organic conversations. I want to know, share with the ladies, you all are very successful. How did you get here? What was your pathway? How did you get to be successful as you are?
I'm going to start with the two things that I feel like, I always did when I was younger and just kind of early in my career. And one is I just, attached myself to people that I thought were smart and kind and generous and doing interesting work. So whether or not they knew it, they became my mentors. And yes. I kind of overperformed for them because I was so excited to work for them. I wanted them to respect me. And, I come from an immigrant family where culturally it was like, you're either going to become a doctor or an engineer. And beyond that, there really was no career path for people to teach me about. And so I kind of just had to learn from other people about how to do it. And then the other thing is, my dad, and I think, again, coming from an immigrant family, my dad has always taught me to negotiate. And so even if I didn't do it well, one thing I always tell people is just go ahead and negotiate, because even if it doesn't go well and you don't get what you want, it's amazing practice. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
I think that is wonderful information, because so many times if we don't get it the first time, we stop and we give up. So good. So ladies, never give up.
Practice.
What else do we have out there?
Yeah, and I want to just add to that, because it reminds me of how I've gotten to where I am now, and it's due to being a risk taker. Just taking that risk and really believing in myself more. And of course, I didn't get to that place overnight, nor by myself, but yes. I've been able to take a number of risks once I said, okay, I'm just going to feel this fear and do it anyway. But taking the risk and taking on assignments and projects that were really like a level above, at the next level where I wanted to go, I've been able to really progress in my career just by taking on more risk. And it still happens today. I do it anyway, although I may be fearful, because I think about the alternative. What could possibly happen? And if the answer is no in a situation, I think of it as being the next opportunity.
So Valerie, let me dive a little bit deeper. So you're saying those assignments, are these stretch assignments outside of what you would regularly do? Because I'm a big proponent of that. I think we should be stretching ourselves out there and taking on things that we wouldn't ordinarily be assigned to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely stretch assignments. And I know for me, being a goal setter, like I start off the year setting goals. As a matter of fact, I started off like most of the time of the fall of the previous year. So in setting goals, I do set the goals just, a little bit higher than where I am now, so that I can grow. So definitely a yes to those stretch assignments, because I think as leaders, we want to grow in that aspect, and we never, ever stop learning as leaders. And when you take those stretch assignments, it really does take you to that next level. And then you're able to bring other people up with you as well from what you've learned.
Absolutely.
I love that. I'm going to jump in too.
Yeah.
I think I followed somebody else's path of success so long based on what I thought would make me successful. I went into management consulting because I heard you could make a lot of money doing that. And I got incredible experience and was absolutely miserable. And then, I went into entertainment because I was living in LA at the time, and I loved it. And that felt really soul aligned. And I was really successful there for a while, working really hard. But as my career was going like this, my health started going like this. And I had to learn to take a step back through, I call it my health opportunity. But it was that sounds a lot lovelier than it was at the time. It was really trying days, and I was really sick. But through that, I learned that somewhere along the way, if we're not listening to our bodies and listening to ourselves, none of the success that you have matters. And I think that it was only when I left that corporate career, started paying attention to what the feedback that my body was giving me. I learned so much through that, and then I started my own consultancy, and it was with a new understanding that I was going to bring a lens of mindfulness for myself, for my experience, teach others how to incorporate mindfulness. Like, none of the success matters if we're driving ourselves into the ground and making ourselves sick in the process of all of it. And so I had to meander a little bit, and I had to learn that lesson the hard way. But in the end, I'm so grateful I did.
Natalie, tell us a little bit more about mindfulness. Can you go just a little bit deeper? Because I love that principle and I love that practice, but I think a lot of us don't know enough about it. We think we know what mindfulness is, but we don't truly practice it.
Totally. You don't have to go sit in an ashram in India to practice mindfulness, right? Like, it's truly just the act of paying attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment. And so mindfulness for our brain is what the gym is for our body, right? It teaches our brain to work in different ways. It creates just a little bit of space where instead of just responding, we can take that 1 millisecond and then actually make a conscious choice around how we want to, or I guess instead of reacting, you can actually intentionally and thoughtfully respond. And it's a game changer. It's why meditation is incorporated into so many different types of personal and professional growth, because it literally changes your brain.
I like it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Any other thoughts, ladies, before we move to our next question?
I just want to second the mindfulness. I started meditating probably much later than I should have. And I found that it really does help me stay present and focused.
Yes.
So thank you for talking about that and bringing it up.
Yeah, and I'll chime in too. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Natalie. Go ahead.
I love the comment that just came in. No judgment. That's what matters in the moment, being aware. But that's so hard. When we start actually paying attention to our inner dialogue and our inner narratives, I've always been incredibly hard on myself, and that has required so much work to learn not to judge myself. And then it's how we interact with ourselves is ultimately how we interact with others. But it's key, but it's simple but not easy.
Yes, that's great information, ladies. Valerie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Natalie was talking about too, with the mindfulness and with meditation. I recently started using the insight timer, and I absolutely love that. Oh, you all know it too, right? I absolutely love that because I take time out in the mornings for myself early in the morning and go through prayer and meditation. And that app is absolutely wonderful in getting my mind settled for the day. And Natalie also talked about being in management consulting. I know that world. I've been in it for 12 years. So I know exactly what you mean. And it can destroy your health too. So I hear you with that. I really have to be careful. And that is why I started with meditation last year. I do need to be more consistent with it, but I do it a couple of times a week, and it does help. It helps immensely.
So self-care, right, ladies? Self-care?
Absolutely.
I read somewhere, lack of self-care is self-sabotage. So we don't want to sabotage ourselves.
I love that.
So Valerie, can you share with the ladies again the name of that app so that they can look into it as well?
Sure. It's the Insight. It's called Insight. Yeah, and you just go to the App Store and you'll see it. It's Insight, and it has tons of free meditation practices there, and also a ton of classes. I absolutely love the app. And there are a number of others. Like, for instance, I do have Calm downloaded. I don't use Calm as much. I do love Insight Timer.
That's my favorite.
Awesome.
Too.
That's your favorite too? Okay. Yeah. So we got a winner. We've got a winner.
Insight Timer. It's there's a lot of them out there. Headspace, Calm, yeah, that one's my favorite too.
Yeah, it's Insight Timer. Absolutely. Yep, that's it. I wanted to make sure I had the name correct. Someone was asking about it in the comments. It is Insight, INSIGHT, Insight Timer.
All right, great. Okay. Thanks, ladies. So here's our next question. So we know that occupationally, women have absorbed the brunt of unemployment and layoffs due to the coronavirus. Share with us, or share with the ladies rather, what's our next steps? How do we get back on track? And how did we get there?
I mean, I guess I can go first, which is, one thing to think about is that, it's coronavirus obviously affected women in terms of the economy and in terms of public health also. But then beyond that, when you look at women of color, Black and brown women, I think the numbers even become more severe. And so I think that means for us, we're looking at how do we address bias and racism in the workplace and the larger culture. And then also, how do we make sure that there is affordable and high quality childcare for families? Because that's just a huge piece of it. And it's always been an issue. But, this past year of the pandemic has really just shined a light on how much families, you just can't work as a family like in this little unit over here. I mean, we really are all part of a larger community and ecosystem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think companies have been saying that they're getting serious about diversity and inclusion for a while. And I think that going forward, if they really want to show that, there can be programs that are looking to get more women back into the workforce. So develop programs specifically targeting women and women of color specifically around, we're going to make your life as easy as possible. With remote work and remote leadership, if a company can set it up in a way where it's not, your success is not based on how many hours you spend sitting in that chair, but the quality of your work. And and when you get it done or how you get it done, there's some flexibility that can help women if they're having to manage children who are doing distance learning at home, if they're having to manage disproportionate amounts of responsibility inside the home, which we know that's still the case. And so I think companies can get really creative around how they encourage women to come back into the workforce if they get real about it. And if they have other, especially working moms, creating some of the programs to attract these women.
Yes. Yeah, we need them at the table, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have to be at the table. They absolutely have to be at the table. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Valerie?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I just want to add to what Natalie and Juhu have said that, I think it takes the corporate world to be intentional allies for women, and particularly for women of color and Black women. Let's just call it what it is, because for a long time, Blacks and people of color have suffered in the workplace. That's why we have these different days to represent us and to celebrate us. For instance, all the equal pay days. There are a number of equal pay days now. I mean, like every group has one. And I think that as a corporate culture, they need to really rally around Black women and also people of color too, and have different groups that support women. And then also, I think there's a piece that lacks in flexibility, with workplace flexibility, and also looking at gender bias as well. That's a big part of it. And then just revamping really the entire culture, even with performance reviews, all of that. And that's just to scrape the surface just a little bit, but just take a look at those things in the workplace as we move forward, because we are dropping out like in droves, really. The report just came out from McKinsey this fall, and it talked about this very thing. And I guess I didn't think about it due to COVID, but the report said due to COVID that women have dropped out because they've had so much pressure on them, working, homeschooling,
Yes.
and then their wives. And, you know, we do a lot of things as women because we're brilliant like that. That's how we're made up. But yes, I got to give us our kudos while we're alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we do a lot, and we've dropped out because we haven't necessarily had the support to keep up like we need to. It could be, you know, more sick days or more days for the childcare, and then honestly, to stop badgering. The corporate workplace needs to stop badgering us because we have decided to have a child. You know, and because we get that sometimes. Okay, so you're moving up the ladder, and then someone may ask you, okay, so you're not going to move up because you have a child. Stop punishing us for being the creators that we were designed to be.
Yeah,
that is powerful.
yeah, I just feel like even, frankly, even in a lot of organizations where people, where their mission is to support women, you'll find that there's a lot of that really subtle pregnancy discrimination. And, one of the things I always say is workers have babies. Families have babies, if we want to keep our human race going, this is just a part of part of our corporate culture. But the other thing that I think is important when it comes to the kinds of policies that we need to see companies and other institutions making is really looking also at the skill sets of women who are re-entering the workforce after a long time. Because it's not that they've been not working. I mean, as you said, Valerie, women are running the world and frankly holding up the world. So understanding all of those transferable skill sets from taking care of families and community members and being actively engaged and leading community associations, those are all transferable to what companies need, and really recognizing that in hiring and promotion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Agree.
I know, all great information. I was like, yay. We talked about gender biases. I can't believe we're still there, ladies. Help me understand, why are we still here fighting against gender biases? It's been like hundreds of years we've been doing this. So why are we still here with gender biases? Have we made any improvements in your perspective?
I'd like to say that we have. I feel like we're like inching along. It wasn't that long ago that a woman could be terminated for being pregnant. And while there are certain laws in place now to prevent that type of discrimination, the bias is so threaded into our subconscious. I think what's interesting is that people fail to recognize that oftentimes I coach a lot of executive women, and one of the first conversations we have that is a hard one is that most of them have gotten to where they are because they have shown up more like a man, right? In terms of that masculine energy.
Yes.
And they have been linear thinkers. They get it done.
Yes.
They move forward. They can be counted on. And then they get to a certain level and they are judged and seen sometimes in a negative light because they're not demonstrating feminine characteristics that we want from our leaders. They need, and then they start getting feedback you need to smile more. You need to seem more welcoming. And it's but I got here because I was like this, and now I'm being evaluated like this. And the tables turn. And so I think understanding the gender judo that women have to play around being seen as both intelligent and capable, and that likability component where you have to be likable in order to be accepted. It's a really tough thing to wrap our minds around, especially if we have gotten to a place of success by enacting a totally different set of skills. But it's still there. It's 100% still there. We would be lying if we said it wasn't.
Yeah. How do we break it? What are we doing to break it? I know it's out there, and that's just a horrible example you shared with us, Natalie, that it's still happening. And you're right, in the code switching that has to go on to climb that ladder. And when we take a peek into those boardrooms, I see commonalities in there. So what are we doing? How, what do you tell the next woman down the line that's having the same issue?
I actually feel like, for me, doing the work of social justice and social change, and I'm an optimist, and I feel like, I have to be an optimist to do this work, but it's kind of like what you were saying, Natalie. I mean, the pace of change is slow, and I feel like it is very much 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But then when you look over time, we have made substantial changes. And a lot of it, I think, is about making sure that we have this really clear, shared vision, that we all know where we're headed, and we are inspiring people to join us. I think often people fall back into these, unconscious or implicit biases because they're not doing that habit, being mindful, as you've noticed, they're not really thinking about it. And the more that we make this just a part of every day in the workplace, and thinking about how our corporate cultures are actually impacting workers' culture and the bottom line, the more progress we'll make. But that progress can be slow, and that is frustrating, and it hurts us in the meantime as well. But it's about finding ways to push forward. And these kinds of collective conversations, I think, are a huge piece of it, because we're helping identify solutions, and we're finding ways to support each other.
And having a voice to do so. I agree with you, Juhu. I agree, because, when women don't have a voice, we don't get the opportunity to share this information and our feelings. So great information there. Valerie, did you have anything to add?
Well, there's a study out there that says there's millions of dollars, I think about 8 million or more, spent on bias training. And it is said that sometimes it's not effective because only 1 in 4 employees will take it. But I think that honestly, it's a step in the right direction in having bias training, because we are born with biases, and it doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. But I believe that the biases affect our decisions, and particularly in the workplace. On a given day, we make about 35,000 decisions daily, like going through our head. And then it's like over 1,000 a day that we make on what we're going to eat. So with that said, I'm thinking that in addition to what Natalie and Juhu have said, that bias training could really help when it comes to gender, because when you are made aware of your biases, you're able to really take action to get rid of them. And there are some steps that you can go through in really getting rid of the biases. I mean, there are coaches now that help you unpack the stuff, the biases that you have. So although the studies say that we're not taking enough of it and it's not enough applied knowledge, I think that it's worth having the training to really dig deep into what is holding you back, or what are you holding against someone else, particularly a woman or whatever, just because they are a woman. I think that's one of the first places to start.
Yeah, I think that pause is something that I learned a while back with biases and seeking awareness. And I think every seed sown is going to help us bring it to the table to have a better understanding of, oh, wow, that was a bias. And I think Harvard has a really great list of biases out there. There are biases that I had not even considered. And I was like, oh my goodness, yeah. So lots of information, but it's information sharing. It's having these very courageous conversations as well about it, and being able to call it out for what it is as well.
Yeah, Tonya. And if I may add that you're exactly right. Harvard, and I think it was UVA, and also Washington University, I believe, that did the IAT test, that implicit test. So it's a test, and it has like 14 or 15 assessments. And there are biases, for instance, against people who For weight issues, you have, of course, the race. There's so many different biases. And I happened to take the test, and it was really revealing as to what my biases were. So you're exactly right. There are a number of them out there, and there are some tests too that will help you identify and then give you some tips on how to get rid of them. And even there's a halo effect, in the workplace as well. Like if you look good, according to the other person, it's all subjective. So it's that too that we deal with. And again, training sometimes can help with that.
That's really good, Valerie. And I think what makes biases such a great call out is because with those biases, that changes people's lifestyles. It changes families because you can get overlooked for promotions, advancement, raises because someone has a simple bias, which is probably a large bias at that point, against you. And so now you are talking about income and monies that are going in to support my family because you think I'm too dark or because I don't speak the way that you think I should speak. And you've developed a bias here that now prohibits my family from having a livelihood that I've worked really hard to share with them. So I think that it's so important that we call out biases and we look within ourselves and say, what's going on here? Why am I really thinking like that? And I think anytime that you have a very strong emotion against a situation or you have a very strong answer against something, typically that's a bias. If you feel, oh, I cannot do this, or no, she's just not the one, that may be a bias you're struggling with as well.
Yeah. I love that. And like paying attention to that, like, oh, that's interesting. Where is that coming from? I think, to Valerie's point, like looking at training and then having training that helps you take small steps. Like there can be inclusion nudges where all of a sudden, you're taking smaller steps, but you're recognizing the bias along the way. I think the more access we have to people who are different than us, the more comfort we gain in that, right? And we become more comfortable, which then breaks down those stories and those biases that we were probably taught or that we gained through some sort of early experience, but it's simply not true. And I think that's why, when we have more women and women of color in leadership positions, we're able to see like, you know what, she's pregnant and she's doing an amazing job. Like I don't have to be scared of a woman getting pregnant in a senior leadership role because now I have an example of someone who's doing it really well, for example, right? And so you then need to build new stories and new experiences instead of simply relying on something that maybe wasn't even yours to begin with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, and Tonya, Kwatika just asked in the comments where she could find the assessment, and I posted it in the chat. I'm not sure if she saw it or not, but can you all see that? I posted the link to the test.
Let's see.
I can see it.
Okay.
You guys can see it?
Okay. Yeah, it's called Project Implicit. And if you Google that, Project Implicit, and it's by Harvard, it gives you the IAT. It's called Implicit Association Test. That's where you can take that test to identify biases.
Yeah. And if you're not, that's a good point. I'm glad Kwatika asked that as well, because you could take the test and learn about your biases as well. And then I think it's also helpful if we could kind of find small, safe circles where we can have greater conversations about that so others can be able to identify their biases as well. We start small in little clusters there. And before you know it, we've changed a whole department around with biases. But, start small and begin to learn as much as you can about your own biases. And reach out to people that don't look like you, people that don't talk like you or sound like you or even think like you and say, what do you think about me? Do you think I have biases? Or and just get their feedback, and then you'd be surprised what they share with you as well. That's good. That's good. All right. So Kartika, you got your information here. And I think someone shared, look up the covering up at a major university about sexual harassment in 2021 with all of this happened. Does anyone know anything about that comment? I'm not familiar with that at all.
No.
I'm not either. Sorry. Not sure.
But I mean, unfortunately, we're even, hearing about sexual harassment in New York State and the government. I mean, I think one of the great things about the Me Too movement is just how much it just made everybody so much more aware and more comfortable. I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of thinking and talking about this, but it at least opened it up. And so, I think that we're going to continue to see more of these claims being made because, the good news is that people feel like there's a way to talk about it now, and it can still be extremely difficult, but there are more resources out there. And I think that we, as a culture, we're developing more of a shared language, and also just more of these spaces that we create for women's leadership. It's a way for women to support each other and say, this is how you might bring a claim forward, or here are the things to think about. It's a way to kind of share that information about how to actually protect yourself going forward.
Absolutely. The more information you have, the more you can fight your way and press your way through as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So look for resources out there, ladies. Any other comments on unconscious biases or implicit biases before we move on? And to all of our viewers out there, if you have some questions, you can certainly put those in the comment section as well. We've got a great panelist. They have a wealth of information. So any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Ladies, let's talk about imposter syndrome, specifically with women. What are your thoughts on that? That's been a hot topic lately, but imposter syndrome has been around since the early 70s. What are your thoughts about imposter syndrome with women in focus?
I'll jump in. I think men absolutely do experience imposter syndrome as well. I think there's such a focus on women and imposter syndrome because as we're starting to demand more of these, demand a seat at the table, demand more parity, demand access to things where maybe access was limited in the past. I think that because in those new experiences where you haven't experienced something before, there can be an internal feeling like, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? I don't know what I'm doing. It is, it's so prevalent. And I love the research out there that talks about both in classrooms as well as when applying for jobs. I think I might mess up these numbers, but I think it's something like, to apply for a job, a man has to be about 70% sure that, or he has to meet about 70% of the qualifications. Whereas there's a LinkedIn study that said a woman needs to feel like she meets 100% of the qualifications in order to apply for the job. Then the LinkedIn thing was like, just apply. You don't have to meet 100% of the qualifications. A lot of it's an ideal situation. Yet, why are we being socialized that we need to feel like we do? It's almost like we're socialized to want to be perfect. And I think that when you're striving for perfectionism, imposter syndrome is like the nasty other side of that same coin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. I definitely agree with what Natalie has said. And I really think that it is our culture that has done this, honestly. And it has started with Black women and people of color, even at a young age. I mean, I remember growing up in grade school, just being told that I could not do whatever it was, and I was on a track that I didn't even know I was on this track. I ended up graduating at the top of my class in high school. I graduated as valedictorian. And so during that time, though, I was told, like in elementary school and junior high, that I wasn't going to be whatever I wanted to be. So you have those things sometimes where people really speak negatively in your life, and I think it plays out a lot when you are young. I just saw the video with Serena and Venus Williams, that clip that came about when they were in their teens and they were having an interview. I don't remember the newscaster's name, but they were having an interview with him, and Venus was telling him, you know, how good she was. And he was questioning her, how good she was. And then their father, Mr. Williams, came in and stopped the interview because he noticed what the newscaster was doing to this young child as a teen. So I think a lot of times for us, the society that we're in, they play a big role in this imposter syndrome, if there's any such thing that we have it, because a lot of times I really don't think that we have it, so to speak. And if we do have it, we have it because others have brought it on us. We're riding here. This is International Women's Day, and we're riding on the shoulders of some phenomenal women, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to let Juhu take it from there, because I know she's waiting to say something about this too, but I just think that, you know, society has played a big role in us thinking that we're less than, and also Natalie talked about that applying for jobs. I've heard the same thing. Like women, we think that we have to have every I dotted and every T crossed, and men not so much. But I'm not sure that we've necessarily created this situation.
Yeah, no, and you know, one of the things that I always think about and I talk about when it comes to imposter syndrome is, you know, I really actually tend to think that for brown and Black women, for us, it's really much more about an invisibility syndrome. It's really that you work, you put in the hours, the skill set, the producing of solutions and outcomes, and we're not always seen and recognized in the same way. And we're also, I think, not always taught early on to go out there and say, like, this is what I'm great at, and to really engage in that kind of just sort of like putting it out there for ourselves. And I think it's that invisibility, that sense of invisibility often, that makes us feel like, well, people aren't going to see me, people aren't going to understand, and it's going to be a much bigger fight to get to where I want to go. And I know that for me, it's really often about pushing through and recognizing that, you know, like I see myself, people who value my work see me, and that's enough for me to know that I can shine no matter what.
Yes, you will.
I'd love to jump in. I think that's gender bias in action, though, right? Because when women can sometimes be punished for saying me or I too much, because the gender norm is that women are nourishing and community focused. And so when we're not talking about we and we start talking about I, there can be an adverse bias and against the woman who talks like that. So early on, we learn how to give credit to the group and how to bring others along in order to align with that gender norm. And then that's where I think you get into some of the systemic bias against women in organizations, because they were never taught to promote their own achievements and accomplishments. If you come up for a performance review or you get to a certain level, and all of a sudden the woman's just not a fit or doesn't have that executive presence, and it's like, but she was never taught, encouraged, or rewarded for that. How is she going to learn to do that now?
And was in fact punished, probably.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and Natalie, I saw you with the word like fit in air quotes. I get it. I don't like that word either. It's more of a culture ad. So again, society playing a role in what we have today.
You know what? That's all great conversation. And I wanted to circle back. I'm not sure who said it, but it was a checkbox. Maybe Natalie said something about the checkbox. And that is so true, that when, you know, we often go in interviews and, you know, some people will get a job based on potential, and some you actually have to have like all of the boxes checked. But I say, ladies, just apply. Just apply.
For sure.
Yeah. So I was going to ask Juhu, question here. I guess this is for you. Are there any specific human rights that we should be more focused on? I think somebody wants to pick your SME expertise here.
Yeah, I saw that question and I thought, oh, I hope we get a chance to get to that. I think that right now, especially we're especially at the dawn of a new presidential administration. I think that the right to health and our human right to health, especially here in the U.S., is really critical. I mean, we've seen through the lens of COVID, right? We've seen that mix there of public health, the economy, and race, and how different communities are being impacted in different ways. And you've got under all of this is this huge umbrella of our right to health and healthcare in this country. And, you see it playing out right now in terms of vaccine rollout. But just, one of the things that, as we're talking about women and leadership, so many women that I hear from are a little bit hesitant sometimes to get out there and even start their own business, because health insurance is tied to a job in our country and it is unaffordable. You can actually have a decent healthcare plan and not be able to really afford the care that you should be able to get. And so I think that that's an area that we all need to be advocating more on, is our right to health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So ladies, if you're out there viewing in, feel free to bring those questions in. I think here, Rashawn says, if you're holding yourself back from being your authentic self, you are truly shining. All right, so ladies, we talked about gender bias. Let's talk about that gender pay gap. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but that is something that is near and dear to my heart. What's going out there at gender pay? How do we fight against this? Have we made any motions toward, okay, we're getting closer? Natalie?
I think I'm gonna pull up that stat. This was from July 2nd, 2020. The World Economic Forum has estimated that it will take more than 100 years to close the global gender pay gap.
100 years.
Wow.
100 years, ladies. That's a gender pay gap.
So I think that understanding that, and again, going back to how we're socialized, in every woman on this call, every woman who watches this replay will have an opportunity at some point in their professional lives to ask for more. Men are socialized to do it. Men think it can't hurt. Women worry that it can in fact hurt. And so do your homework, do your research. No, you don't want to come with some crazy number, right? But asking for more, and more can look different. It doesn't always have to be, a dollar compensation. It could mean, an extra week of vacation or something like that, because that's really worth it to you. But in looking at your total compensation and your total pay, there are very few opportunities where you get the chance to have that discussion around numbers. And so when you're getting a promotion, when you're getting a new job, when you're truly excelling, and they're trying to just give you a title increase, there's always an opportunity to do your homework and research and ask for more.
Yeah. Have a voice.
Yeah.
I love that, Natalie.
Yeah. And, I think the thing is that there's been, research that does show too that for women, sometimes there will be a little bit of pushback if you've asked for a raise or if you've asked for something. And there's some really good advice out there about the ways that we as women, and it's not fair that we have to do this, but that when we ask for a raise, when we say, look, I'm ready to get a greater commitment from this company, that we want to show that it's going to benefit us, but it's also going to benefit the company as a whole. And again, it's infuriating because men don't have to do that. But we as women do. And I think that often we know that when we're doing better, our companies and our communities are doing better. So I think that these are easy arguments to make. But I think that goes back to why it's important to get in the habit of asking. And if you ask for little things, you'll get more comfortable as you're asking for the bigger things, because it just has to be like, it's a habit. It's like any other muscle that you grow and exercise.
Yeah. Great information. Valerie, what are you thinking about gender pay gap?
Yeah, definitely agree with Natalie and Juhu with that. Definitely finding our voice and then using our voice, and also doing research, empirical research out there, going to your glass
Yes.
door and going to salary.com and payscale.com, because what I know is that we're actually never paid our worth. I don't believe that we're ever paid our worth, but I do believe that we can be paid within a certain range for what we bring to the table for our skill set. And it is a matter of us asking. And what I tell my clients is, get in the mirror and practice this. Get in the mirror and practice it. And then also take that a step further and speak with a friend or a family member or something and start practicing. Let it roll from your tongue like, okay, so I'm getting a raise. Now you're taking me to $105,990. So can we just make this an even $106,000? I mean, like, really let it roll from your lips as to what you want. And I think it is power in us asking, because as I said before, if the answer is no, we go with the next opportunity. But we never know what that answer would be if we're making up someone else's mind for us and saying, okay, well, I'm not going to ask because I don't believe I will get it. I think there's really a lot of power in us asking. And we just have to remember that too. It could be in salary, it could be in bonuses, it could be in vacation time, it could be in a whole lot of different things that we can negotiate when we come to the table. So we just have to remember that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is really important is that there's such a taboo in our culture around talking about money and asking each other about money. But I think it's so important for us as women to talk amongst ourselves, but even more important to ask our white male friends and colleagues how much money they're making, how much they're charging, all of that, because that has definitely affected how much I ask when I feel just amongst your female network. I mean, that's really important, but let's pull the men in who are the ones getting paid substantially more to make sure we know what to ask for.
Yeah. And oh, go ahead, Natalie, go ahead.
I was going to say, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more either, because honestly, they end up being our friends. Yeah. They really do. They end up being our friends. And you'll find that a lot of times men are willing to give the information. We, again, have to ask.
Don't be afraid. Be confident.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Natalie, I think we have a question for you. How does power distance affect companies?
It absolutely affects companies. I think that a really big trend inside of organizations is for leaders to have these informal conversations, these town halls, these more casual policies, because they're trying to reduce the distance between themselves and their people, trying to make themselves more accessible for that reason. Because when there is that massive power distance, we can tend to not only do they have a harder time communicating, sharing their messages, and getting the outcomes that they're looking for from their teams. But then there's also a greater likelihood that a person's personal experiences and personal experiences with leaders are going to be projected onto that leader themselves. And so it gives a chance for everyone to work better together and to get to know each other more when those power distances are smaller. I don't know if that answers the question.
Sherry, if that does not answer your question, put some feedback in the chat for us. Let's see here. Rashawn says, your voice is your superpower, use it. And then she says, yes, the worst thing is that they give you what you ask for, and now you have to decide how you are going to celebrate. Absolutely. Absolutely. So ladies, we are wrapping up our hour. I'd like to use our last and final question. And of course, if you have anything else you want to add, the floor is open as well. But what advice would you give our next generation of female leaders? What should they know?
I'm going to just start again with negotiate, and again, practice it, practice at low stakes. And then I think the other thing is to really think about it's not just what you say. I think really learning about powerful body language is something that helps us show up in a way that we don't even understand, but that sort of attracts and draws attention to you. There's been a lot of research on it and how women can actually use body language to convey power. But again, when we're talking about, sometimes it can feel threatening to some people. It's less threatening because it's subtle. But I think like 80% of how we communicate is through body language, even when it's virtual like this. And we've been doing this for a year now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Juhu. What do we have for the next generation of female leaders?
I'll jump in. I would say, I've been really big this year on understanding masculine and feminine energies. So in a world where, and this is not about gender, this is about energies that we bring. And I think understanding where you are in terms of if you naturally have a lot of feminine energy, if you're in an incredibly masculine environment, you're not going to. If you are a woman who has a lot of masculine energy and you find yourself in an incredibly feminine environment, that might be tricky for you. And so understanding yourself and where you fall on that spectrum, and then creating alignment for yourself based on your core values and what's important to you. You don't have to follow anybody else's path to success. When you listen to yourself and when you listen to what is authentic for you and what feels good, and you actually go with what feels good as opposed to what somebody told you have to do in order to survive in this world, it's incredibly empowering. And I think if the next generation of women leaders gets really good at like tapping in and listening, a lot of that comes through mindfulness and meditation, in my opinion. I think they're going to be really well positioned to succeed.
I agree. And we're starting to see some of that as well.
Absolutely.
Valerie, what's your advice to the next generation of female leaders?
Yeah, I love this question because my direct relationship is with my two daughters who are now in college, and one of them is getting ready to graduate. And she asked me, as she turned 22 last month, what would I tell my 22-year-old self? And I was like, oh, listen, here we go with this question. Like, what would I definitely tell my 22-year-old self? And as I thought about that question, I said, you know what? I believe that I would definitely have a mentor earlier than what I did. That's one of the things. And I also told her that I would have taken, I believe, just a little bit more risk. When I was younger, it's really weird. When I was a little younger, I was like, kind of timid and did not want to step out as much. But now looking back, I wish I would have done a little more of that and then gotten the mentor early on instead of it just kind of happening some kind of way. It wasn't planned. So that's what I would tell the next leaders, these emerging leaders, to really get a mentor early and then know the difference. We didn't go into this tonight much, but know the difference between having a mentor and then a sponsor, someone who's going to show up for you in the room, when you're not there. And then also really look at your goals, your dreams, and what you want to achieve, and take the challenge and feel the fear, as I said, and just do it anyway. And of course, have accountability. I don't think that we get very far in this world by ourselves. And I love the quote by John Maxwell where he says that you don't know yourself and you can't grow yourself by yourself. So it takes someone, I believe, to help you to get up that level, next level, and go up the ladder. So that's what I would say to emerging leaders.
I love it. That's great information. Great information. And Valerie, I agree with you. Sponsorship, ladies, if you do not have a sponsor, someone speaking on your behalf in the boardrooms and those big decision-making conversations, reach out to someone. Begin, start with a mentorship and then further it to sponsorship. The first person may not take you up, but the second person may. Just ask. You just never know.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think we've got a few. Sherry from Everybody's Favorite Twins would like to interview some of you. So I wanted you guys to maybe you ladies to take a second and introduce yourself. That's a bad habit. I got to stop that. You
It's
ladies,
okay.
to take a second to share with those that are viewing and those that are going to view after how to connect with you if they wanted to connect with you to get additional information.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll go first. I am on LinkedIn as Valerie Ashford Brown. I'm on Facebook, the same name, and I also have a business page. It's under Coach Valerie Ashford Brown. I'm also on Twitter, the same name, and also on Instagram. And if you'd like to email me, you can do so at info at my name, ValerieAshfordBrown.com. You can find me there. So I look forward to connecting with the ladies here online. Yeah. Thank you all.
I'm on Twitter and on LinkedIn at my name, Juhu Thukral. And I also have a website that I'm actually redoing right now. So it's under construction, but it's just my name, JuhuThukral.com. So I'm easy to find there.
Thank you.
And I'm on LinkedIn, Natalie Underdown. I'm also on Instagram. My handle is _new, NU, like my initials, co. _new_co. This is why you're not supposed to have underscores in your Instagram handle. After the fact, so learn from my mistakes, please. You can also send me an email, Natalie@thenewcompany.com.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we got just a few more. I think our audience has enjoyed everything that you shared with them. So we've got tons of comments in here. Ladies, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you for celebrating International Women's Day with us. And I want to tell all of the women that are tuning in, continue to have a voice and continue to choose to challenge until we are completely there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Tonya, once again.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.